But the Hollywood Reporter did a really interesting piece, curveball, on Justin Roiland's animation empire, the fall of it, actually revealing a vast amount of more alleged things going on, basically. So if you don't know, Justin Roiland has been charged. I think he's going to court basically for what was it? It's like imprisonment and like kidnapping and things like that, of like a pretty awful stuff, like of a woman. He's got like
false imprisonment or something.
Domestic, alleged domestic violence, right? But yeah, false imprisonment was part of it, and fraud and things like that. So pretty awful stuff. He's been fired now from Adult Swim. Yeah, and this is the voice of Rick and Morty. Now, obviously, this is all alleged. We still don't have any confirmation of this. Let's not. It's important not to convict people in the court of public opinion prior to an actual conviction and the evidence. I mean, that's what happened with Johnny Depp. Not cool, right? It's not cool. However, there is a vast amount of evidence against him of other things that have happened across the years. So we'll get into it, because this is, quite the tale that a Hollywood Reporter spun here. So on January 9th, Hulu debuted its animated comedy Koala Man, the latest installment in what was then Justin Roiland's sprawling empire, which is true because he's got like a game out as well. He's got his own video game company now as well. Like he really captured this sense of humor and just chucked it out there into the world. Pretty crazy. So in a matter of months, Roiland had released the hit video game, put a collection of paintings on exhibit, aired a 6th season of his Adult Swim juggernaut Rick and Morty, and snagged a 5th season for his other Hulu series, Solar Opposites. 3 days later, that image as a high-flying animation maestro came crashing down. On January 12th, NBC News revealed that Roiland was facing 2 felony charges in Orange County stemming from an alleged 2020 domestic violence incident that occurred with a woman he was dating at the time. That August, he was arrested and released on bail. Roiland has pleaded not guilty. The news, which blindsided both his employers and his colleagues, was greeted with an outpouring of other troubling revelations surrounding his online interactions, with multiple women publishing lewd messages they claimed to have received from Roiland. He direct message former Mad magazine editor Ali Gortz, a longtime fan who is prepping a Rick and Morty concept album. Can you write a song about 9 dicks of different sized and ethnic origins hanging above your face, and then in the lyrics describe how they each splatter you with semen? He allegedly messaged another woman who posted the exchange using an anonymous Twitter account and claimed to have been underage when they began corresponding. You should run away from home and go into sex slavery, you effing... I can't read that.
You can't say it, or you can read it.
I can read it. I can't say it on the stream.
Yeah.
You effing stupid Togath B-word bitch joke. Togath is faggot backwards. Anyway. So pretty awful stuff, like pretty horrendous stuff. Over the next 2 weeks, insiders say advertisers panicked, lawyers huddled, and ultimately one of the biggest names in animation watched his career imploded. Roiland was stripped of his lucrative overall deal at Disney's 20th television animation, and both Adult Swim and Hulu released statements that they had severed ties. Roiland will be replaced as the voices of Rick and Morty, Solar's alien scientist Corvo going forward. Even Squanch Games, the video game studio that he co-founded in 2016, announced that he'd resigned as CEO. His whole life is just gone now. Roiland, who declined to comment for the story, is due back in court for a pre-trial hearing in late April. But there's more. Any comment on what we've just heard, though?
Sounds pretty crazy.
There's more. There's more.
There's more.
To many of Roiland's colleagues, the criminal charges came as a shock, but they also point to workplace behavior that has made them uncomfortable for years. According to multiple sources who would speak only on the condition of anonymity, Roiland once paraded a high-profile porn star through the Rick and Morty writer's room, openly discussed threesomes, and was involved in at least one instance of alleged sexual harassment during the show's 3rd season, notably its first with female writers. the season of Rick and Morty was the first with female writers. In 2020, Cartoon Network, for which Adult Swim is the nighttime arm, conducted a formal investigation that examined Roiland's inappropriate workplace conduct. It's uncertain what, if any, actions were taken. Cartoon Network declined to comment. More recent, I mean, parading a porn star around, like, what relevance does that have to anything? Like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to. Now, don't take this as in any ways condoning any of his behavior, one way or at all, right?
Hmm.
But I'm going to say this. This is something I've noticed as a commonality when they've started to add more quote-unquote diversity to writers' rooms, is you get a lot of the wrong people into the fucking mix. Maybe this is not something normally people would do, but guess what? Whatever fucking worked for them before worked like a motherfucker, and you changing it now caused issues. Now, I'm not condoning anything that Roiland did or anybody else for that matter. I'm just saying something got thrown into the mix, and all of a sudden this whole fucking thing came tumbling down. Right? Again, it just, to me, I think it's a matter of the BS that comes when something is working. Don't mess with it. Right? So what if they didn't have any women in the staff? Maybe that was good for a reason. Right?
Well,
like,
yeah, you say so. Yeah, I agree with that. Sure, but that's not.
I mean, I'm not saying they don't.
Yeah, okay. Related to the porn star being paraded.
Yeah, you know what? If there was no other women there, then nobody would have been fucking offended. That's my point.
No, that wasn't when they were there. I don't think the alleged sexual harassment.
Okay, so that's two separate instances.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. From what it reads like, yeah.
Well, the sexual harassment thing, that is like, yeah, you got to be an idiot to do that nowadays in the workplace. Yeah. I mean, come on.
More recently, multiple sources say that Roiland, other than voice work, has not had any meaningful creative presence on any of the series that bear his name. In fact, many of his former colleagues say they haven't heard from him in years, and when they have, it's been unpleasant. They note, too, that he hasn't been on speaking terms with Rick and Morty's co-creator, Dan Harmon, for multiple seasons, and a substantial number of staffers on that show, as well as Solar Opposite and Koala Man, have never actually met Roiland, even over Zoom. Well, that doesn't matter. Who cares? So
why is he a problem? I don't get it.
Well, I guess they're just showing how he's sort of disenfranchised with everything, to be fair. I guess, I don't know.
I'm confused though as to why he's a problem at the workplace if he's never there.
Well, no, that's with certain people. That's not with all of them. Just certain staff is on the show. But yeah, you are right. Some of this was early, like, season 3.
Yeah, they're kind of mixing a lot of shit here together. That's why I'm getting confused as to when this stuff is actually happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those puff pieces, isn't it? So it's to capitalize on the SEO of Justin Roiland being binned off. So I would imagine some of this has been put together in a bit of a hurry. But yeah, it's interesting. They say here, in short order, the duo sold an idea born from one of Roiland's zanier shorts, an off-color parody of Back to the Future, where Doc repeatedly convinces Marty to lick his balls. The men populated their writer's room with their Channel 101 pals and got to work. Unlike Community, where horror stories about late nights and brutal working conditions were well reported, Rick and Morty was, as Harmon once described it, easy and fun. In those early days, he and Roiland were said to be an ideal match. When Harmon would be writing funny jokes, Justin would get up and draw a really funny drawing. And that combined is what led to the smart, silly sort of gumbo that turned into Rick and Morty, recalls a show source. But yeah, apparently it just sort of went downhill from there. Roiland began pulling away, increasingly uninterested in being in the room that had given him great joy only a season earlier. He had apparently a drinking problem as well. He was always he was drunk when he was doing a lot of the voices, which is why when this story came out, I was like, it's not really a surprise. Behavior obviously changes when you're intoxicated. I can understand certain elements of that.
Right.
But yeah, so by season 3, Rick and Morty had hired its first batch of female writers, which didn't stop Roiland and others from doodling penis monsters and other vulgar characters on the office whiteboard.
That's what I'm talking about right there.
Well, I mean, it shouldn't, should it, to be fair? As one show source recalls, Roiland could still be highly engaged and appropriately silly, though too often he was surly, petulant, uncommunicative, and grouchy. Like he always wished he was doing something else. According to another show source, he was easily distracted too. The writers would regularly walk over to a Toys R Us where they would buy action figures or Nerf guns, and then he played with them the rest of the day, and we couldn't get any work done. What the fuck? Other show sources said he derailed pitches and interrupt with sophomoric non sequiturs like, what if his brains were on the outside? It reached a point where multiple sources say it was easier when Roiland wasn't in the room. That sounds like a combination of his drinking problem more than anything else.
Could be. Or it's just people who were not putting... I mean, again, it could be just mixing the wrong people together, too. Because, like, if it wasn't a problem before, now all of a sudden it is. Like, the whole thing that stuck out to me was, like, it didn't stop them from drawing, you know, penis monsters and stuff. It's like, yeah, I can see where people are complaining here. It's people who came into this expecting it to be a normal work situation, and it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shouldn't, like... yeah, that's...
My point is we don't know if that was any different than it was before. Like that, maybe that's part of Roiland's creative process. You know, maybe it's his autistic way of saying, this is not fucking working. I need some creative, you know, energy here. Let's go over to Toys R Us. You know, like, which is not an uncommon thing. I've heard, you know, like a lot of guys who worked in like internet and stuff. I remember, like, you know, we'd do that kind of stuff all the time too. You'd be there for 12 hours doing something. Eventually just go like, you know what, let's go see a movie, you know, like, and we go see a movie or whatever, you know, it just out of nowhere, you know, sometimes that kind of shit happens. And again, I'm not condoning any of this behavior, but I'm kind of seeing it from both angles.
Well, they say here now, about the, as we get up, I've skipped a few bits because it's just world building. It's not that interesting. It's just about his decline. And then we jump to the incident that occurred in the news. So the staff of Roiland shows described feelings of disgust, fury, and betrayal as they waited on the fates of their series, which they were worried were now tainted. In the days immediately following the January 12th news reports, we didn't know if it would all go away, says a source. Then the situation snowballed with a raft of Roiland's deeply troubling online interactions being shared across social media. The reason that I posted
this, I think, is the bigger problem. Yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah. The reason that I posted my DMs was to add to the mountain of evidence and the pattern of behavior, tattoo artist Veronica Sweeney tells THR, with the messages she released in which Roiland asked if she has a boyfriend and suggests that they meet at Comic-Con. Former Mad editor Gortz, who posted an exchange in which Roiland requested that she write a song about a crude sexual act, says that she also received pornographic gifts and propositions from him, telling THR, I really think that he, in a lot of ways, took advantage of someone who couldn't have been a bigger fan. I mean, if he knows that she's a fan, then yeah, he's taken advantage. Old interviews that Roiland had done were suddenly being resurfaced too. Back in 2011, appearing on a podcast, he joked that he would be attracted to a fucking 14-year-old that looks like she's 18 and has big titties. It's a bit off, isn't it, really? It's a bit off. And riffed on Dateline NBC's To Catch a Predator segments. In the same breath, he added, I'm not a paedophile, though. His work, which has long made comedy hay of subjects like incest and sexual deviance, was now being viewed through a different lens. So it's like, is he shrugging off his deviant behavior in terms of comedy, but that's actual truth behind it? Who knows? As the allegations and headlines accumulated, staffers wrestled with their association, desperate to telegraph that Roiland had not been meaningfully involved, save his voice renderings, for years. In fact, they barely knew the man. So basically, just, I mean, like, it's pretty grotesque stuff.
I mean, again, like, yeah, a lot of that stuff I would never condone in the behavior, but some of it feels very overblown in a way. Again, I don't see, you know, you shouldn't take advantage of somebody who's like a fan or whatever. I see that position of it. But you notice that she said proposition, didn't necessarily say that he specifically tried anything and didn't send any pornography of himself, sent some pornographic gifts. Okay.
Yeah, true.
I mean, again, I'm not saying that's a good behavior.
Yeah, but I mean, look, so, but I mean, so if I was doing something like that, I would expect to be called out as being taken. Like if I was sending it to a subscriber and sort of proposition people, like I would expect to be called out as a certain element of, not necessarily an abuse of power, because I don't think there's necessarily a power dynamic, but it would definitely be an element of taking advantage of someone. You are preying on someone that has a vested interest in you as an individual, and you're leveraging that to gain sex, I guess, like sexual gratification.
It's creepy, but I don't know if it steps over that line necessarily. Yeah, I don't know.
It happens all the time.
I would say it's predatory behavior to a certain degree. It's leveraging, in a predatory fashion.
Yeah.
Going, right, well, I know I can get it from that. She's interested. I know where I stand in this. Let me grab some puss. So, to be very, very blunt about it.
But,
it's really
and
crude.
again,
Right?
Grab them by the puss. I like it when you do that.
Again, the problem with this is it's because of the other statements he's made. Again, I'm not condoning any of this. I'm not sticking up for him.
Isn't it? It's adding it.
But is it any different than a guy who buys a fucking Trans Am and all that kind of shit to get pussy? Really? I mean, at the end of the day, let's be real.
Are you comparing it to buying a car?
I'm not saying it's much different. What else do men usually use to get women's attention, especially if it's not their looks? Let's be real here. I'm not condoning it, but
women are not interested in cars, mate. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I was just saying it as an example.
Women couldn't give a fuck about cars.
Well, they don't. You don't know Americans, do you? Jesus Christ!
There's tons of videos on YouTube with people busting out gold diggers using cars.
Exactly, dude. I'm like, what fucking world do you live in, man?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, true.
The girl turns the guy down, and then he gets in the Lambo, and she's like, turns around and was like, "Hey, what is this? Your car? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm actually my plans just mysteriously got canceled.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying and I'm not saying it's even comparable in a way, but it is in a sort of way. But again, it's bad mojo to do that with a fan, right? Like it's
Women do this kind of stuff too, but
it's called makeup.
Called out.
Dear. So yeah, I mean, I thought we sort of cover that as an update.
Yeah, the other statements though really, really pin him as a real creep though. Yeah. Like it makes you wonder.
Yeah, 14-year-old that looks like an 18-year-old with big tit. I mean, that's comments that you just like. The thing is, he's on a podcast, so he's saying it publicly. You've always got to remember, what do people say? What does someone feel is appropriate to say publicly versus what they don't think is appropriate to say publicly.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta leave the locker room talk out of the public eye.
Well, my point is that he genuinely think that that's fine. So what does he think what does he think and feel in truth and reality that he doesn't say to the world? Because that's inappropriate and shouldn't be voiced anyway, right?
Well, and that's the thing. Was it something that was in jest? I wanted some more context. Again, I'm not trying to stick up for him, but it comes along with the idea of there's certain things that you could take out of context that anybody says, that if it's a joke one way, but again, it's hard to pin a joke on what that comment could be possibly referring to. Like, again, I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to defend it.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens with this whole situation. I mean, we've got to wait like 2 more months, so it'll be fascinating to see the pre-trial and kind of what happens from there.